Hi, it's Ken. Welcome to this week's Frequently Asked Spiritual Questions video. If this is your first time here, I invite you to subscribe and click the bell to be notified. My focus in responding to your questions is to support you in deepening your experience of and relationship with the divine by whatever name. This week's question comes from Daisy, and it is, how can we integrate? It's a great question, Daisy. It's a big question. Let me see if I can begin answering this question with the video this week. And I really encourage you and everyone here in the community to comment and ask further questions that will help me extend our conversation in a way that's meaningful for you around integration. So let me just begin by talking about integration as a concept. What is integration? Integration is really a move from the illusory, what is not real, that is, what appears to be separate. We could think of it as the mind, body, and soul, for example, or the separate self and the whole self. These distinctions aren't actually real, but we experience them that way. And we don't experience them that way as human beings because we've done something wrong, or there's something flawed or broken, or we've been cursed or abandoned by God. None of that. It's actually a function of a completely understandable and profound, actually, spiritual developmental process, different stages of consciousness that we move through as human beings. And understanding these stages of consciousness is really, really powerful for understanding the different perspectives on what is being integrated, why it's coming up, and how we go about supporting the integration process. I'll link in the description to a video on the stages of consciousness from the resonance experiment. And there will be some additional videos coming that will also be linked in the description eventually around the stages of consciousness. In any case, these experiences of things that appear to be separate or unintegrated, and as we do the work, we move from a dynamic that appears to be separate to a dynamic that we experience as one. As I say, what's actually real is the one. The body, the mind, and the soul are not separate. They are one. You are not separate from yourself or the divine. You are one with yourself and the divine. You are not separate from other people on the planet. Not anyone, actually. We are all one, no matter what their beliefs are or their behavior or any of that. And there's much more that we can say, and I can't wait to explore with you in a future video how we can understand people's behavior from the perspective of separation. But I want to get back on point here. What is integration? It's the process of supporting the shift from experiencing things, aspects of ourselves or of life, from how they appear to be, as we think of them from a conventional perspective, to how they actually are, to the truth of who we are, so to speak. And in that transition, in that transformation, there's an enormous amount of integration going on. There are many different perspectives on what's being integrated too. It's not just the mind, body, and soul. It's not just the separate and whole self. We could think of another aspect of what's being integrated as the divine expression as you, which you might think of as your unique spiritual gifts. Those to be integrated, perhaps even your message or your divine mission. All of these are aspects of that are available to be supported in our integration. How do we go about doing integration work? Well, one of the first ways we do it is we live our lives the way we're living them, and we encounter challenges. At least we probably think of them as challenges, and then we try to figure out how to overcome those challenges, and we focus on that from all the different perspectives that we all bring from different cultures and beliefs and so on from around the world. But it's not that we're seeking one specific path to the truth. It's that we are all discovering our own path to the truth, to the integrated experience of who you really are. So one of the most powerful ways that I'm aware of to support integration is to engage in an embodiment practice, to consciously support, and again, it's an illusory experience, but the experience is profound, especially when we're coming from a default perspective of separation. To experience, to consciously support our souls, our individuated essence of the divine, in coming into the body fully, to coming home into the body. And that process alone is absolutely profound. And I'll link in the description to a couple of resources to support you in doing embodiment work. And then there are a series of spiritual practices that are really powerful for deepening and extending integration. I actually teach the 6 practices of spiritual mastery. And if you want to think of it, those practices are about the internal sort of private victory or private experience of integrating the divine within, in experiencing it, encountering, integrating, embodying the divine within. That's vertical embodiment. But then there are other practices that support a deeper level of integration. For example, the second practice is about calling power home. In our earlier developmental stages of consciousness, we give power away left and right. Again, it's a very natural, normal part of our developmental journey. When I talk about spiritual development, a great way to think about this is in the analogous experience of a child is born, they sit up, they crawl, they begin walking, they jog, they run, right? That's a developmental sequence, a developmental process. But no one would say to a child who is having a hard time sitting up, why aren't you running? Or why is it taking you so long to learn how to walk? Everyone does it at their own pace. And we do the same thing in our spiritual journey. We do the same thing around our process of integration. And so these practices, these spiritual practices, can be and are very powerful in supporting that integration. Calling power home is a really important practice. It doesn't make a lot of sense to call power home until we've embodied, though, because until the power center, until our energetic essence is home in the body, where can the power land? How can it come home? How can it integrate? The third practice is about piercing separation. So once we pierce it, then we have an opportunity to integrate it. And we can do that with the fourth practice, which is about experiencing viscerally at the level of the body, felt in the body, your wholeness. There's a practice that I received through Divine Download called Beneath the Sand, which is profound, not just in opening the experience of your wholeness, but in supporting its integration. And then I'm laughing because it was a very challenging aspect of my spiritual journey, and to some degree still presenting itself. And that is the fifth practice, which is a practice of letting go, a practice of surrender. There's a huge difference between unconsciously surrendering and consciously surrendering. And the most significant difference is when we consciously surrender, we are choosing to engage in an entirely new level of integration. Something extraordinary begins to take place. And it takes place not just at the time of surrender, but in the months or years and weeks and days and moments that lead up to that conscious choice to surrender. And it's important to remember that the aspect of each of us that is surrendering is the empowered separate self. So I can't surrender for you. You can't surrender for me. And it's actually that part of you that believes it can solve any problem and fix anything, that it has the control, the ability to make things the way it wants them to be. That is the aspect that surrenders eventually. And for many people, that surrender experience takes place after the final breath on the deathbed. And for many others, consciously as a choice before that final breath. That is a profound process of integration. And then the sixth practice is actually a practice of integration. That is to say, a practice that integrates these various components all into one experience that is deepening and expanding and extending who you really are into each and every aspect of your life. I think the question comes up at this point. Well, do I have to figure out what these practices are? Do I have to learn the practices you teach, Ken? The answer is no. Who we really are is being uncovered by the practices that God has given me and that I am the steward for, that I get to share and teach and facilitate and experience these for myself. My experience of them is that they have offered both extraordinary challenges and extraordinary opening in the process of my spiritual journey and my journey as a spiritual messenger. And I think the point is that is true no matter what spiritual practice we engage in, no matter how we go about living our lives. Eventually, these aspects will integrate. Back to your question, Daisy, how can we integrate? We can live our lives. We can engage in spiritual practices that resonate with you. You can do that. And when you engage in those practices, I just invite you to remember, whatever practice they are, I invite you to remember that this journey that you're on is a developmental journey in consciousness. And what is going on, the dynamic of your life is supporting your integration. It's not getting in the way of it, no matter how it might feel to you. In the same way, the experience of what you have lived, the way you've lived your life, the stuff that's come before, this is not an accident. It's not a mistake. It has been profoundly serving you. And if it's difficult to recognize that right now, I promise with some additional perspective, with some additional integration, you will begin to see the profound beauty of the path that you have walked. And you'll realize it was a path just for you. No one else has walked nor will ever walk that path. No one will encounter the things you have encountered, ever. And that path is and has been and will be all about supporting your integration. From my perspective, it all begins with embodiment. This is the most powerful single thing we could do. And I think I've mentioned this already. I'll link some resources for embodiment practice in the description so you can learn more about embodiment and experience an embodiment transmission with me for free. Links in the description and options for diving deeper as well if you feel called to do that. I'm really curious about what's coming up for you as you're watching this video. What is coming up to ask about and reflect on? Integration's a huge topic. I can't wait to dive in deeper in ways that are most meaningful for you. Looking forward to the exploration and the comments below. Share vulnerably, share authentically, share about your experience. We are all in the process of uncovering and experiencing who we are from all these brilliant perspectives. We're not all going to come to an agreement on any particular aspect of that journey. We're each going to be having our own process, but we can do it together. We can encourage and support one another. And ultimately, the gifts that the divine expresses through you, I believe, are meant to support not only and most critically you in this process of integration, but also, if you choose, they can powerfully support others as well. And your journey of integration is such a beautiful walk in the divine garden of these gifts that express uniquely through each of us on the planet in all our unique perspectives. If this video resonates with you, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe and click the bell to be notified. And please do join our community by heading over to kenwstone.com and add your name and email address to the newsletter. Peace.